All right, hello everyone. We have a large crowd here today. Sarcasm. But my name is Anna Blevins and I'm the 6th grade counselor at Harper Park Middle School. And I'm really excited to introduce to you Megan Marshall. She is our student assistance specialist and she's going to talk to us today about substance abuse. So take it away.
Thank you. Good morning. So I have some information that I want to present to you both today. But I also wanted this to be kind of a conversation. So feel free to jump in if you have any questions, comments, anything, and we'll just kind of take this discussion wherever it needs to go. So like you heard, I'm the Student Assistant Specialist here at Harper Park Middle School. So what that means is I provide substance use prevention in the schools. I have a couple other schools that I go to as well, but here at Harper Park I provide presentations through health and PE for both 6th graders and 8th graders about substance use awareness. And this year I did presentations for 8th graders and 7th graders about vaping prevention because that's been a big thing in this school as well as all of the schools. So I just wanted to share with you guys some of the most commonly used drugs by middle schoolers, right? So I've also included some of the slang terms that tend to go along with these drugs. So with marijuana, people call it pot, people call it weed, loud pack, dabs is another one. Alcohol, everyone's probably familiar with. You might hear it called booze, hooch. People talk about being turnt, which means they're drunk, they're under the influence, and loco is a big one too. Now vaping or nicotine is a big issue that's going on with young people right now, and you might hear some slang terms like vaping, cloud chasing, mod, and juuling is a big one as well. Inhalants is another one that's pretty common with middle schoolers or younger adolescents. You might hear it called whippet, huffing, dusting, and then over-the-counter medications as well. You might hear robo-tripping, people call them Skittles, triple C's. Someone might be called a Dex head if they're using over-the-counter medications. Now, the bottom two, right, inhalants and over-the-counter meds are pretty deadly substances to be using. Why would you guys think, I'm going to ask for some audience participation, why would you guys think that younger adolescents tend to use these more so than older adolescents?
Easier to
They're
get.
accessible. Exactly. You can find inhalants under your kitchen sink, wherever you keep your chemicals, or cleaning products. Over-the-counter medications you can find in the medicine cabinet, or sometimes younger adolescents will steal them from stores. So it's important as parents just to be aware of what medications you have lying around the house, and keep an eye on those, or maybe put them in a place where younger adolescents aren't able to get their hands on them.
Another thing I noticed with that is my oldest, who's 13, used to tell me he thought gas smelled good.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So.
Like at a gas station?
Like
when I was cutting the grass, just putting gas into the lawnmower.
Yeah.
He liked the smell of that, and Sharpies.
And that is another thing.
Sharpies as well.
Yeah, and they're such common items that are around, so it's pretty much impossible to keep them away from a young person. And you hope, and part of what I present to middle schoolers through health and PE is about the dangers of it. Because I think a lot of times they don't realize that it could kill you. Actually, people die sometimes as a result of inhalants, and you think it's just a Sharpie. I write with them all the time, but when you're inhaling them, that's killing brain cells and depriving your brain of oxygen. So that's scary. But thank you. So marijuana, just so you guys are aware, kids are not just smoking it anymore. And the marijuana of today is, between 4 and 7 times more potent than the marijuana of the 1970s. So it's getting stronger, and kids are finding more creative and different ways to use it. When young people are using marijuana, they're at an increased risk of addiction. Their brains are kind of wired to become addicted faster than older adolescents or adults. Their brains are still developing at the age they are in middle school. So it's still making connections, growing, changing. So when you introduce drugs to a brain like that, it just increases the potential for addiction, and it can happen faster. And research is starting to show now that there's links to serious mental illness with marijuana use. And when I say serious mental illness, I'm talking schizophrenia, which is a debilitating mental illness that people have forever.
Pardon the interruption. We're now ready for String 8 to come to the auditorium for group photo. That's drinks 8, the auditorium for group photo. Thank you.
Okay, so I put some pictures up here I want you guys to take a look at, right? Because this doesn't look like none of this looks like marijuana, right? These look like cookies and brownies and delicious stuff you would find at a bakery, but this is what edibles look like. So basically what an edible is marijuana baked into a baked item. So somebody could be eating an edible and you wouldn't know it because it looks just like a normal snack. And same with the gummies at the top. That's something that young people are eating now, which again includes marijuana, but it looks just like a normal gummy bear or gummy item. Down here is an example of a creative young person's rendition of a bong, which is a way to smoke marijuana. So even if a young person doesn't have access to like fancy pipes or paraphernalia, they can make their own sometimes. So stuff to be aware of if you're seeing things at home, if you're seeing wrappers for, strange baked goods that you're not familiar that your kid might be eating, that could be a sign. If you're finding, strange water bottles that, holes are poked in them or they're, the label's all torn off, why is somebody keeping them? Those could be signs that someone's using marijuana. And also some of the other signs, you might see red eyes. Somebody who's under the influence of marijuana is going to be kind of sleepy or lethargic. Their heart rate goes up, but they also may be kind of confused. There's a lack of focus. Increased appetite and memory issues can go along with marijuana use as well. Now, alcohol is another big one for young people. Actually, there's a lot of research done on alcohol use in teens, and what they found is age 11 is the average age of someone's first drink of alcohol, which is kind of scary because 11 is 6th grade, right? Sometimes even 5th grade, and those are little people trying dangerous stuff. Alcohol is a gateway drug, I believe. If somebody's willing to drink alcohol, it makes it even easier to try other drugs because they've already tried that. And the alcohol of today has an increased amount of alcohol in it, so the content is increasing. Four Loko is a big example of this, right? If you look at it, it doesn't look like an alcoholic beverage. It says fruit punch on it. It looks like an energy drink, and it's marketed that way on purpose, so it's attractive to young people. But if you can see, it's 12% alcohol in that can of Four Loko. So if somebody is unexperienced or inexperienced with drinking, they drink that whole can and become very intoxicated. And then people are also drinking hand sanitizer, which I know sounds pretty gross and scary, but yeah, there is alcohol in hand sanitizers, so sometimes people will try to consume alcohol in that way too. So some of the signs of use, these are pretty obvious. You may smell alcohol in someone if they are drinking. Their eyes can be bloodshot, flushed skin, slurred speech. If your teen is spending more and more time outside of the house, that could be a sign that they're drinking, want to spend the night all the time, sleepover. These could be signs that they're drinking because they don't want to come home and be caught, or have you smell it on them. So vaping, right? This is a big one. It's in the news a lot. Young people are vaping more and more, it seems like, which is a dangerous thing. Some of the other names for a vape or vape products could be an e-cig, a Juul, a mod, or a vape pen. This is a Juul right here, which is the big thing that kids are using right now, right? And it looks like a little USB. Looks like you plug it into your computer, and you actually can plug it into a computer to charge it. So as you can see, it's the size of a hand, so it's very easy to hide. People wouldn't know that you have it. You can easily stick it in your sleeve, wherever you need to hide it. It's very easily done. It's important that you know that legally you must be 18 to use or buy vape, but kids find ways to get them. You can buy them online, and a lot of times on the websites online, I don't know if you've checked them out, but it's click a button. Are you 18 or over? You know what I mean? Which is not really policing that at all. And kids will also get older teens to buy them for them or get them for them. Now, with vaping, there's an e-juice associated with that, which is the liquid component. With the Juul, there are special pods that go along with it. But you can also find sort of bottles of e-juice, and they almost always contain nicotine. Sometimes they say they don't, but what they're finding is that there's still trace amounts of nicotine, even if it says that they don't contain any. So some of the signs of use, how you might know that your teen is vaping, if you're finding vape products would be a big one, if you're finding bottles of juice, if you're finding something that looks like that in your house. And there's different flavors attached to the vapes, so they often have sort of fruity flavors. A lot of the flavors seem to be attractive to young people. So you might find fruit punch or cotton candy or cereals like Captain Crunch. So if you're smelling kind of odd chemically but fruity smells like that, that could be a sign that somebody's vaping. And Vape Nation is something that was actually created as a joke, but it's really kind of taken off. And I don't know if I can do it right. I'm gonna see if I can do it right. But VN, so if you see somebody making signs like that, that means they are a part of this Vape Nation. And it's really just saying, I vape and I'm proud of it. There are
Pardon the interruption.
t-shirts.
If you participate in Allegro, please come to the auditorium for your group picture. That's Allegro, group picture in the auditorium right now. Thank you.
But there are t-shirts and all kinds of clothing products out there with this Vape Nation on it. It's a big thing right now. I want to show you guys a short clip, right? If I can make this work. Fingers crossed. Let's see. This is actually done on Channel 7 News. And it's just information about juuling.
So many have answered the call of duty, saluted, and selflessly served our grateful nation. ABC7 Salutes is one small way in which we gratefully salute back.
ABC7 Salutes is brought to you by Penn Fed Credit Union.
There's a question you might want.
It's not working. I'm sorry. Wait, there it is.
to be asking your kids, especially after you see this next story, is your child juuling in school?
Pardon the
As
interruption.
e-cigarettes and
If you
vape.
participate in Music Lab 6, please come to the auditorium for a group photo. That's Music Lab 6, auditorium for group photo.
Vapes with adults are trying to help them quit the tobacco products. They are now booming in popularity, especially among teenagers.
Our consumer investigator, Kim Suitors, is looking into what can be done to protect your child. And Kim, this is something most of us have never heard of before.
Most adults respond, drooling?
Yeah.
What? No, you're not alone, Allison. This is a Juul. It looks like a flash drive, charges by USB. It accounts for half of the e-cigarette market. A 700% increase in sales just last year. It's supposed to be an adult alternative to cigarettes, yet most adults have no idea what it is. But the kids, they know. What is this? A Juul? You're supposed to be 18 before you even know what a Juul is.
That's a Juul.
These girls are 12.
You like smoke with it and then like stuff comes out.
When parents ask, it might go something like this. What is this?
A flash drive.
Right. You don't have to look far to learn how to hide it. This YouTuber cut his backpack strap.
And then I just slid my Juul in there.
To show how to Juul in school. Where do you see it? Where do you see kids do it?
Like the bathroom.
What about in class?
There was a girl, like she did it in health class, she just like blew it down her shirt.
There are many e-cigarettes and vapes on the market, but this is so widespread among teens. Juuling is now a verb. This is the most popular with the kids.
Yes.
The nicotine in one Juul pod, the equivalent of a pack of cigarettes, delivering a quick buzz, sometimes too powerful. And teens have a name for that, Nixon.
We've never seen a trend like this before. It's so prevalent amongst the student body that only like a mere third of the students haven't participated in it.
When these McLean High School juniors polled their classmates for a cover story, 2/3 admitted to juuling. 1/5 confessed to doing it every day. Not only is the Juul easy to hide in plain sight, so is the high.
With Juul, it's what's been described as a 5-minute buzz that keeps you entertained in class. If your eyes aren't red, your speech isn't slurred.
The kids all know, the parents do not.
So these are for fixes.
In January, the McLean PTSA held its best attended meeting in 2 years.
Here on my computer, this USB drive I have is not an actual USB drive. That's my charger for the Juul.
Fairfax police reported interventions for vaping have already doubled last year's total.
Back to class, they load down the form, and it's gone.
The school's principal has no doubt teens are the target.
It's these slim devices, it's, being able to plug something in, it's coming in different flavors that a teenager would like. It's being geared toward kids.
The FDA did make it illegal to sell to kids.
We will redouble our efforts to protect kids from all nicotine-containing products.
But it also moved the compliance deadline for new products from 2018 to 2022 to foster innovation for forms of nicotine delivery that are potentially less harmful than cigarettes. Why isn't the government stepping in?
This is a classic case of the government dropping the ball.
The Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, Matt Myers, wants the FDA to regulate these products now so we know what's in a Juul and what's being done so it doesn't appeal to kids.
The developers have to prove under current law that before you introduce a new product like this, that its sale and marketing is actually appropriate for the protection of the public health. It means that we're not addicting millions of kids across the country with a new nicotine product.
You believe we are?
I believe we are.
You know how many warnings there are on a pack of cigarettes, and I found one warning from the state of California on this Juul package. It's tiny, it's on the back. It's about the risk of cancer and birth defects. One Juul pod, by the way, as we showed you in the piece, is the equivalent in terms of nicotine of a pack of cigarettes. It can take a long time to get through a Juul pod. It just depends on the user.
They're using these in class, and all the kids know about this?
I mean, look how easy it is to just hide it in your hand or put it in your sleeve or stick it in your pencil pouch or hide it in your backpack.
Wow.
Great information.
Eye-opening. All right.
Yeah, real quickly though, what we have to say, we did talk to the people at Juul, and they tell us that their mission is to eliminate cigarette smoking, and they strongly oppose the use of this product by minors, and they say a lot more. You can read the entire 2-page statement. It is attached to this story on our ABC7 News app. And I do credit them. They declined an interview, but they did answer our questions directly.
Okay. That's good. All right, Kimberly, thanks for that.
Thank you.
Good morning. Pardon the interruption. If you are in Music Lab Guitar 6, Music Lab and Guitar 6, please come quietly to the auditorium for your club pictures. That's Music Lab Guitar 6. Thank you.
So did that bring up any questions for you guys?
No, I've seen that one before. It was a great report.
Yeah. It is scary how, all of the young people know what these things are, and a lot of times adults don't. So that information travels so quickly for young people. And I think, while it was initially developed to help people get off of smoking cigarettes, young people are not using it in that fashion. They're starting off with it. And what research is telling us now is that a lot of times when young people start with vaping, they end up switching over to cigarettes in the long term anyway. So it's not really a healthy product. So inhalants, right? And this is another commonly used substance by young people. It's basically inhaling household chemicals or poisons. Some examples, and these are all pictures of things that can be inhaled by young people. Air freshener, air duster, spray deodorants, the Sharpies are down there, glue. And when you're doing this, when you're inhaling these chemicals, it deprives the brain of oxygen. And I want to make sure you know that it's not just being around these chemicals. So if you spray, we'll say air freshener in a room, that's not enough to impair somebody. What they're doing is kind of spraying it on a rag and then, inhaling it. So they're using it in a different way than it's intended to be used.
Pardon the interruption. Guitar 7, could you please come to the auditorium for your photo? Guitar 7, to the auditorium for your photo. Thank you.
It's a busy day in this school today. But it does deprive the brain of oxygen when you're putting these chemicals or inhaling them, and it can lead to death. Now, some signs that somebody could be doing this, they oftentimes will get a rash kind of around their mouth from the actual inhaling process. But if somebody, the high from an inhalant, it comes and goes pretty quickly, so it's not a lengthy thing. But if you see somebody that's suddenly not able to stand up, is kind of out of it, very lethargic, those could be signs that someone is using an inhalant. Or if suddenly these chemicals go missing in your household, that could be a sign too. I know I just bought some air duster to clean my keyboard. Where did it go? That is something to keep an eye on if you have teens at home. Over-the-counter medications. This is another commonly abused substance by middle schoolers. And that's, you know, taking medications that you can get at the pharmacy over the counter, you don't need a prescription for them, and taking too much of them. So, again, it's not misusing them if, you know, somebody has a cold or a flu and they're taking a medicine for it, it's taking large quantities. So Coricidin, also known as triple C's, is a big one that young people will abuse, which is, you know, a cold and cough medicine. And NyQuil is another big one. Any kind of cough syrup, people will drink large quantities of it, and that is abusing it. So some signs of use, right? If you're finding little bubble packets like that, empty ones, in your teen's room, that's a big sign that they could be taking. Why else would they have them? They shouldn't have them in their room. If you're missing medicines from your medicine cabinet, that's another big sign. If suddenly, you know, your teen is like, we're out of NyQuil, I need some more cough syrup, that could be a sign too. You know, are you really sick that often? What's going on with that? These are all some things to keep an eye out just to see if somebody is using. Now, if somebody is actively under the influence of over-the-counter medications, they're usually very kind of tired and lethargic. Depending on how much they use, it can go from just feeling really relaxed to actually hallucinating. That depends on how many of the pills they take, but there's different sort of waves of high that people talk about when they're using these, and the most severe is when they're seeing things that aren't there.
How much NyQuil would it take?
It could take a half a bottle, even less, to get somebody under the influence. I'm sorry?
It tastes awful to begin with.
It
so.
does.
All right.
Yeah, and it's, you know, sometimes, I don't know if you guys are familiar with lean or scissor, which is kind of something that's talked about in rap music, right? And that's, you know, mixing cough syrup with a soda, sort of like Sprite, and then they put a Jolly Rancher in there. That's not your typical NyQuil or over-the-counter cough syrup. Usually it's a promethazine, which has codeine in it. But sometimes young people will use NyQuil and, again, mix it with the soda, put a little flavoring, a little candy in there, because that makes it a little less disgusting to drink. It helps it to go down for them. So, any questions about that stuff before I move on? Okay. And I just wanted to touch on a couple of these kind of middle school trends, right? And I had a conversation with actually all of the 7th graders about this maybe a month ago. Right after that snow day, when we had that 2-hour delay, I came in and did presentations for all the 7th graders. And this is one thing I talked about, because these are some of the things that young people are trying right now, and it's really dangerous. I'm sure you guys have heard of the Tide Pod Challenge, which is where people take those little Tide Pods that you know, wash your clothes with, see how many they can put in their mouth. It's disgusting. I don't know what started that, to be perfectly honest, but when that first came out, the number of like poison control calls went up, I think 400%, because so many people were trying it. I know they took it off of social media, or tried to take it off of social media, so more kids are not trying it, but it's out there and they all know about it, just so you're aware. The cinnamon challenge is another one, which is, again, kind of sounds silly, but it's, you know, let's see if you can take a spoonful of cinnamon and eat it, basically. But what happens, cinnamon is a very dry spice, so when you put that much into your mouth, you kind of have a gag reflex and it gets inhaled. So you go like this, you breathe in, the cinnamon gets into your lungs, which is not a good thing. People can get irritations and infections as a result of trying this. And again, I don't know where that started either, but it's funny how they begin and then they just spread through social media and, you know, word of mouth. Dripping is another big one, and that involves vaping, right? So I know you saw the picture of a Juul, right? But a standard vape pen or a vape mod has a couple different parts of it. And they have a part called an atomizer, which is the part that kind of heats up the liquid that creates the vapor. What people are doing is, instead of using it properly, they're dripping the liquid, the e-juice, onto the atomizer, onto the coils, and that creates better smoke, is really what it's about, well, vapor. So that people are able to do kind of cool tricks and do all these smoke rings, and that's what really started it. They can actually, you can feel the nicotine a little bit more intensely that way as well, so that's why it's happening. But it's also really dangerous too, because it's not using the product the way it was developed, so you're at risk of, explosions and other bad things happening. Edibles is another big one, like we talked about before. It's marijuana-based baked goods or gummies. So it looks like normal candy, it looks like normal cookies and brownies, but it's really containing marijuana. And marijuana is not legal in this state, but it's legal in nearby states. So when that happens, products like edibles become more and more popular because they can, and people, want creative and different ways to ingest marijuana. So just be aware of that. That's something that is going on, and it seems to be easier and easier for kids to get their hands on the edibles. Inhaling Smarties is another big one right now, and I don't know why this started either, but basically they take Smarties, the little round candies, crush them up, and inhale them, and then blow them out, and it looks like smoke. Again, I don't get it. I don't understand what started it, but that is something that's happening with young people today. And the danger of it is, you're not supposed to inhale Smarties. You're supposed to eat them. And when it gets into the throat and into the lungs, it creates all this irritation. Infection can happen also as a result of inhaling this, which is not meant to. So if your kids are suddenly asking for a lot of Smarties, this could be something that's going on, just to be aware. I mean, Smarties are a delicious candy, but at the same time, if suddenly, you're getting more requests, that could be something that's going on. And I'm hoping that young people are realizing the dangers of this, because, the benefit of looking cool is not, better than having to deal with being really sick or getting an infection as a result. So I want to share a little bit about what supports are available for students here at Loudoun County Public Schools. Student assistant specialist, that's me. What I'm able to do for students here at Harper Park is provide assessment. So if there's concern about a student using, could be vaping, could be using drugs, I can come in and meet with them, kind of gather information, see if there is a problem, and if there is, how serious it is, and make recommendations, meaning referrals for counseling, for substance abuse counseling, or whatever the need may be. Like I said in the beginning, I also provide prevention services, so I go out to all the 6th graders and the 8th graders through health and PE. I'm also able to intervene with students if they have like a vaping incident, and as a consequence they're an in-school restriction. I'll go out and usually work with them there too, to provide more education. I'm also able to work with students individually at school, and sometimes I'll do student support groups. So if we have a group of students struggling with the same issue, kind of bring them together and try to support one another in that fashion too. And I usually end up doing groups with either the school social worker or the school counselors to again provide support for the students in whatever way they need. The SRAP program is another sort of thing that we do here through Loudoun County Public Schools, and it's the Student Referral and Prevention Services. So basically we have a partnership with Loudoun County Mental Health, where if a student needs more than what we can provide, more of an assessment, we can contact them and they would provide a free assessment for the student. They don't come into the schools, but they would help you set up an appointment at their Leesburg office, which is actually really close to here, and a clinician would do an assessment for free and make recommendations as well. And then again, student support group, which I already talked about, and those are voluntary for students if they want help surrounding a specific issue. Now, my primary focus is substance abuse, but another kind of population that I often work with are, we call them COAs, right? And that would be a child of addiction or alcoholism. So like if a child has a parent or a family member who struggles with addiction, we'll sometimes do groups with them, because that's a unique issue that students deal with. And oftentimes there's a lot of anxiety and sometimes depression and worry that goes along with growing up in an environment like that. So what questions do you guys have for me? One at a time.
We have a bunch of questions, but thank you so much, because some of this I didn't.
That's the purpose.
May I have guitar 8 to the auditorium for club pictures, and guitar 8 to the auditorium for photos. Thank you.
And that is the purpose, to get that information out there.
So it's really, really helpful. So thank you very much.
Good, thank you.
So the question that this one has us is, besides us as a parent, well, you know, we need to watch for these signs. Do the teachers also watch for these signs? Because we may or may not see them, because out of the school or at the time that we see them in the afternoon, nothing shows.
Yes, and teachers do keep an eye out for these things. So if a student were to come into class and be under the influence, say, you know, they're out of it, their eyes are all red, you know, their coordination is off, they would refer the student to the school nurse who could assess them. And, you know, when that happens, parents get contacted so they're aware that their student is being looked at by the nurse. And the nurse can kind of help determine, is the student under the influence, and, you know, do they need medical attention, of course, first, and then kind of figure out what's needed for the student.
I overthink a lot of things. And sometimes I wonder if letting my boys know they shouldn't do this or what can happen will make them think, well, why not try?
And that's not an uncommon concern or
Right.
worry. But I think what I've seen anyway is a lot of times kids don't realize how dangerous stuff is. So sometimes just having that education before they try it can help to deter a little bit. So I think that there is benefit in talking to your kids about drugs as early as possible, and, you know, not only to give them the information, but to start to feel comfortable having those conversations,
Right.
so that hopefully they'll come to you for questions, or, you know, if they do try something, they'll know that you're someone they can talk to about it. And we were scheduled to have a parent presentation the snow day, whatever day that was. That Thursday, we were supposed to have an evening conversation about substance use prevention, and the big focus was going to be how to talk to your kids about drugs. And we were working on rescheduling that, but it's been a struggle to find a room or a place large enough to do that. But that is something that we're working on presenting to the community, because it is so important to just
So
have
having him taste the gas because it smelled good, that's not good?
I mean, it's
It
kind of
made
toxic.
It made him throw up.
Did it really?
I don't know. I didn't really do it.
Yeah, and again, just being around gas at the gas pump is not gonna, you know, cause any issues unless you're like.
I mean, he hasn't been in the garage huffing the gas or anything, but just when he was saying it, he thought it smelled good. I just pay more attention.
Yeah, which is a good way to do that. Just keep an eye out. Yeah.
Right.
Keep a close watch.
And his room, I would think something is up if you started cleaning his room, because there'd be things he wouldn't want me to see, but it's so messy that, well, it could blend in, but
That's true.
he'd start cleaning up and I would think something's wrong.
That would be the change.
Yeah.
And I mean, basically, what I like to tell parents is if you notice any major changes in your kid's behavior, that's a big warning sign. Like if, you know, they're messy all the time and suddenly their room is immaculate, what's going on?
Right.
You know, it's not necessarily they're using drugs, but just stuff to keep an eye out. If you're noticing friends are changing, suddenly it's a whole new group of people they're hanging out with, that could be a clue. If their grades are dropping, if, you know, they used to be really involved in sports and suddenly they're like, I don't want to play soccer anymore, that could be a sign. Any behavior change is a good thing to look at.
Instead of like that coming up the steps, because I don't want to tell them to be quiet. I want to know when they're coming in.
Right.
Strings 8, please make your way, chorus 8, please make your way to the auditorium for your group pictures. Chorus 8, please make your way to the auditorium for group pictures.
Because there'll come a time when he wants to be out later than I want him to, and if he's flying up the steps, that'll
Yeah.
help.
Yeah, most definitely. If suddenly he's tiptoeing, that's a clue. Yeah. So any changes that you notice in your kids is always a great opportunity to just have a conversation about it. And, you know, hopefully that's not what's going on at all, but it can't hurt to just say, hey, I'm noticing what's going on.
Being
Something's
quiet
different.
coming in where
Yeah, where you used to be in the stampede. Yes.
What other measurement are taken in the school, within the school, to, you know, keep them talks, some cop coming, or you giving, you know, a big talk? What are the things that we're doing, that you guys are doing within the school?
Definitely. So through Health and PE, I give presentations about substance use awareness for all the 6th graders and 8th graders. This year so far, I've also done a vaping presentation for 8th graders and for 7th graders as well. Now, the DARE program is not in middle school. I think that happens in 5th grade, where that's where the police officer comes out and, you know, talks about drugs, substance use awareness. But those are the main things that we do at this point. But if anytime if a parent were to be concerned about a student, they could always reach out and let the school counselor know, let the social worker know, let me know directly, and I can come out and talk to them.
Yeah, we do that a lot, especially with Megan, is when we notice something or we think something is going on, she'll come out and meet with the kid. Or if someone gets in trouble for a substance or for vaping or something, she's always part of the process. So they'll have their discipline, but then there's also a follow-up with her. So there's education piece, and we do prevention groups. And if we notice there's an issue like the vaping, we asked her, can you come and do a whole grade level presentation? And she did, and then we noticed in 7th grade, and so she came back out for 7th graders.
So did you see that often? Do you see the vaping often here?
I know there was an incident earlier in the year where a bunch of kids were, I guess, in the bathroom. I don't know how many were involved in it, but I know the whole group of people who were there got rounded up, I guess. How is that handled in terms of there's one guy or kid who's doing it, but his buddies are hanging out waiting, or just waiting for him to finish, or on the lookout? How is that group handled?
And it's difficult because we're not in the bathrooms. We don't have
Right.
cameras in the bathrooms to be able to see exactly who used and who didn't. But the Loudoun County policy is if you use any kind of tobacco or nicotine product in school or have any kind of paraphernalia with you, on you, the consequence is the same. So even if a student isn't vaping, but they're involved in something like that, and maybe they're searched as a result, or
Right.
do you have anything in your pockets, and they have a vape, they would receive the same consequence as someone who actually vaped.
But if they didn't have anything on them, and they just happened to be in the bathroom, then that would be handled differently. So there's a
Yeah,
whole
that's what he
investigation
told
that
me.
happens. Anytime that a kid comes and says, so-and-so was vaping in the bathroom, that
Yeah.
literally triggers something that could take days to figure out who was involved, who actually touched it, who actually was doing it, who witnessed it. So kids are interviewed.
Right.
Yeah, so it's just a process of
I just
figuring
wanted to
out.
make sure he was telling me what was going on, was what happened to him was right, instead of making up stuff, I guess. That's good.
Yeah, if he was a witness to something, he would have been questioned about
Yeah,
it just
he
to get.
was.
Yeah.
He was.
Does that answer?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, perfectly. I mean, it was probably in early September, so it was just curious. It was good.
Any other questions that you guys have? My email address is up here too. That's the best way to connect with me because I do travel from school to school. And I know this is going to be posted on the school counselor's website. But if you ever have any questions, concerns, feel free to reach out by email. I'll call you back. It's just I'm not always by the same phone. But yeah, any questions, anything, feel free to reach out. Okay. Thank you all for being here today.
Thanks
I
for your
appreciate
time.
it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks.